So I'm just going to give a very brief introduction. I'm not Anita, I'm Courtney, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the CCR, and then I'll hand it over to our Research and Education Director, Anita Milicevic, who will be leading our session today. So if you're not familiar with the Center for Contemplative Research, we are basically oriented around fathoming the mind and healing the world, and that is sort of our tagline and our mission. We have 3 domains of impact that we seek to have in the world. So we have what are called mind labs, which you're in one. This is a mind lab, as we call it. It's a physical center for retreat where we have people in long-term retreat moving through stages of deep meditative practice, and many of whom are collaborating with researchers to help kind of measure the impacts we know contemplative practice can have in humans, and use the language of our time, science, and teaching to help share those discoveries with the world. So our second domain of research is really oriented around exactly that. So researchers come to this center. Anita right now is a resident at this center, working with contemplatives in training, deep contemplative training, to design methodologies that help reveal the impact they can have. We have quantum physicists on our board, people from a variety of disciplines who are interested in those discoveries. But education is really what we're oriented around today, and that is sharing those techniques with everyone in the world in a way that's accessible broadly. You know, you don't have to be a deep practitioner of any sort to learn from what we're doing here. So many of us are practicing in the Buddhist tradition. Most people here are practicing in the Buddhist and, you know, some hybrid of traditions as well, but we really seek to encourage dialogue across traditions and encourage people to go deeper in their own tradition. Contemplative practice resides, you know, in all of them, and that wisdom is valuable. So today we have Anita, who's leading us. She has a background in psychology. She is a war refugee herself, and ended up in Australia after the Balkans Wars and gained expertise in trauma specifically. Her PhD is in psychology, and she also has a clinical practice and deep experience in contemplative traditions as well, really bringing those traditions together to help people heal. And she's a remarkable teacher, remarkable healer. She leads our research activities here. So one of her areas of expertise is research methodology, but she's also an extraordinary contemplative teacher, and she'll bring together all of those worlds for us today. So without further ado, I think she'll talk a little bit more about her own background in this presentation, so I'll let her do that. But Anita, please take us away. To get to the PowerPoint. Nope.
Okay, so can you hear me now? Well, everyone. So welcome everyone here in person in beautiful Crystal, and welcome everyone around the world. Thank you so much for participating and dedicating your time for this journey today that we are going to embark on. And also, before we start, I just wish to express deep gratitude to our teachers, to our mentors, and all those who helped us to learn and guide us in our spiritual practice and self-care, growth, and how we can contribute to the world. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. We can I'll move gently to overview of our sessions, and Courtney will guide us through the slides. So thank you, Courtney. So I don't need to, that's okay, that's okay. So we're all on the same page now? Yeah. Wonderful. Welcome. So just a quick overview about introduction. We are going to have a, I hope, gentle introduction about this topic today, and then introduce the notion of self-care, and in this particular context, what do we mean by self-care? And also importantly, what is spiritual care? How does that work together, aligns and complement each other? And then a little bit of reflection on research, specifically in psychology, and the notion of subjective well-being. And also, let's go into a notion of inattention of self-care, and what does it mean when we do not attend to ourselves, when we neglect our needs, what are the consequences? And more importantly, what is the healing process and how we can help ourselves and therefore each other, really, our families, communities, to flourish. So it's a great privilege for me to have opportunity to just touch upon this today, together with all of you. So thank you, and we can go then to the next slide. And the next slide, it's about safety and our intention. So I would really like, we already have beautiful conversation about people feeling comfortable here in this very space, and also online at your home or wherever you are, that through these slides and this journey that we look after ourselves and people around us. Maybe I'm going to touch and mention some topics that are causing discomfort. So please feel free to maybe walk or stand up, but even raise your hands and ask a question that maybe clarity can help. So just I hope that that's what we can do today. And before we start with the intention, I would like to also share with you that the photos presented in these slides are taken, I took those photos here in this beautiful sacred place. And there are different motives and different landscapes and symbols in these photos. So I wish to acknowledge that this beautiful divine place in this sacred valley used to be a Christian hermitage. And then now it's a retreat center, research center in Indo-Tibetan tradition, so that people who are not familiar online with all this beautiful scenery and symbolic presentation, that they know the milieu and the background. And let's just take a moment, a short moment to clarify our intention for today, our motivation, why we came here today, me expressing gratitude and inviting you, everyone online and here present, to just pause for a moment and set our intention for today. So thank you. Let's move to the next slide. So this photo is taken 2 weeks ago here in our center. And I just would like you to take a moment and to reflect. And while we are looking into this beautiful landscape and scenery, I would like you to reflect about your self-care and gentleness. My background, where I was born and raised on the Balkans, it's known as the crossroad between two worlds, East and West, Christianity and Orient, and many worlds who were present for centuries, many cultures, many creeds and religions. So I will read a few lines of a poem that was written by a prominent poet from that region. And to set the tone of nurture and gentleness as a poetry or a symphony of relationship and intersubjectivity for all of us, online and here. If you mourn in this region, it turns into a poem. If you sin in deed or saying, the bells will call a prayer of atonement. If you bear a child, a lullaby will be heard. If you die, a lamentation will follow. If you fall in love, verses will be spoken. In painful sleeplessness, whatever you do, it will turn into a poem. That's from Anita Milicevic. And now we can go into our topic for today. So self-care. What do we mean by self-care? The World Health Organization defines self-care as the ability of each of us, of individuals, families, and communities, to promote health, to prevent disease, maintain well-being, and manage illness and disability with or without the assistance of the healthcare provider. So this is a very general, rich definition of self-care that covers many aspects of our lives. And what I would like to mention here is that according to World Health Organization, unfortunately today, there are 3.6 billion people, so the half of the world's population, who don't have access to healthcare and therefore self-care. And I just wish us to be aware of that, to acknowledge that, and to be grateful for what we have. And also the awareness how we can extend our hand in any way to change that. And also self-care is a process. It's not a treatment. It's not a treat. It's a process of primary prevention, focusing on attending to a person's multifaceted physical, social, psychological, also professional, spiritual and personal needs. And we will talk about that today, hopefully, and you'll have some questions as well, or maybe reflection and knowledge that we can exchange. So those are the main definitions, and then I would like now to go to these 7 pillars of self-care. This is defined by International Self-Care Foundation, and it's really divided in the basic categories that we need knowledge. We need some basic knowledge and literacy in health literacy, what is healthy and what is useful for us, for our families. A second aspect or second pillar of self-care is mental well-being, self-awareness and agency. It's very important, and our teachers in previous Ghatikas from the start talked about self-awareness and how we can train ourselves to be aware and to be mindful. And what do we do when we are not? and how we can see that and adjust and build that. And also sense of basic agency, that there is a minimum, psychologically minimum control over our actions. There is nothing predictable or stable in this world. But I can give you just a snippet of extreme situation, what is shown to be more traumatic than, for example, people being in a combat. The most extreme situation is to people being in a refugee camp. And mothers not knowing when they are going to have a next meal for their children. And that's what I mean by agency. So there is nothing there that can support your role as a mother, as a nurturer. So that kind of agency. So the minimum sense of not reification, not taking for granted, but just that bare minimum that something is predictable in that sense. Basic human needs. And then physical activity, of course, it's very important that we have vitality, healthy eating. Risk avoidance is a big factor in our self-care, and how do we act and what kind of behavior we take and why. Good hygiene, something that's basic for our human needs. And very last but not least, maybe very important at this stage where we are in the world, it's a rational use of product and services. And I remember there was 2 years ago, I believe, in one of the most famous Australian newspapers, there was a title, "Did you break your bank for your self-care?" Which means how do we spend, how do we invest, how do we shop, how do we take services in terms of our budget, our physical and family care, our environment, how do we use services and products. So these are the aspects, and we are going to go into mental health, well-being, and self-awareness, and we can go to the next slide then. More specifically, it comes down to a very simple point, and it cannot be emphasized enough, that it's a conscious effort to make time for activities beneficial for maintaining mental health and physical health. And we suffer from not having time and not choosing to have time, or feeling under the pressure that we can't. And I choose this from American Psychological Association. That there is an ethic code that it's more than 20 years ago. It's an imperative for all psychologists, but also for all helpers, for all carers, community workers, social workers, youth workers, that, especially psychologists in this sense, that it's not just aspiration, I'm going to look after myself. It's actually a must. It's if a therapist or a counselor doesn't look after themselves, they're really breaking the code of conduct. Because how can we help others if we are neglecting ourselves? There are times in our private lives when those things have to be negotiated. Those are extreme times. And still, self-care is primal, it's crucial. So next slide to introduce spirituality. And then maybe if somebody has a question, or we can of course have questions and answer at the end, but if there is something you would like to ask. I found this beautiful journal article on spiritual care and palliative care for the counselors and helpers. And I thought that this definition of spirituality can be beneficial in terms that it's dynamic and intrinsic aspect of humanity to which person seeks ultimate meaning. We seek purpose and transcendence and experience relationship to self family, others, community, society, nature, and the significant or sacred. Then next slide. In his book, Ethics for New Millennium, His Holiness the Dalai Lama talks about spirituality in this beautiful way. And he said, I take to be concerned with those qualities of human spirit, such as love and compassion, patience, tolerance, forgiveness, contentment, a sense of responsibility, a sense of harmony, which brings happiness to both self and others. And I hold this deeply in my heart because it's one of the most beautiful definitions of spirituality that encompasses everything. So next slide, Courtney, please. So we are coming to spiritual care. And according to Lama Alan Wallace, that spiritual care cultivates and sustains authentic well-being and encompasses a quality of well-being that guides a person through all stages of life and death. So it's not just one phase of our life. You know, it could be, and usually the more mature we are, but it's actually, you know, in the full nurture and beauty in all stages of life and dying and death. It leads to our inner journey, the truth seeking and understanding of the actual nature of reality, gradually discovering the trustworthy source of all meaning, well-being, and healing. Isn't that beautiful? So 3 years ago, I joined, I registered myself as a spiritual care practitioner in Australia. It's an organization, it's a body that has registration for all spiritual workers of all traditions and creeds. And it's a beautiful organization that provides a framework for work and also many other ways of supporting. And I was asked to write a few notes about what is my understanding of spiritual care. And of course, learning from my teachers and in an Indo-Tibetan tradition, I came with these few lines that are not originally mine, but they are more compiling the wisdom of the Buddhist tradition in general, that it's cultivation of sublime ethics. Because the question that I pose, can we really be well and mentally healthy and without being ethical? And what does that mean? You know, that people say, you can have many vitamins as you wish, and you can run. But if you're not truthful to yourself and to others, how is that going to work? And if you're not at some stage of your life, how that can be mended and healed? Do we see that? So it's a sublime ethics, and it involves love and kindness, compassion, empathetic joy and equanimity or impartiality, both for the guide, for the mentor, and the seeker. Spiritual care approaches the core of the innermost sources of suffering. You just don't want to suffer. And happiness, and the source of genuine happiness or meaning in people's life. So spiritual care cultivates universal human values that is really emphasized by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It sheds light on the ground of courage, boundless love, and great compassion. And I would like to emphasize here that all this can be learned and trained. It's a practice. You know, 30 years or maybe more, 40 years back in psychology, it was assume that or believe that we are born with courage or that we are born resilient. But actually, courage is something that we learn and train. And it's not absence of fear. Courage doesn't mean that you are not fearful. Courage means that we choose to do right thing despite the fact that we are afraid. And practicing that gently every day, every year, sometimes we are forced to practice courage. That the same is with boundless love and great compassion, that in this very tradition, in this very center, we learn how to cultivate our compassion, how to cultivate boundless love, not to be attached to those who are close to us and similar to us, and not to have aversion for those who are very different or even wish to harm us. That's the great aspiration and great training that sages of this tradition and many other traditions prove to be very possible to train and prove to show how powerful that is. So, 5 domains of spiritual practice. I choose this Spiritual Care Australia 5 domains, not because I'm imposing something that is more important, or but it's really close to our private personal practice. And just to give you a picture, what is that work about? Because spiritual care in Australia practitioners, they can be practitioners in one particular, specializing in one particular tradition, but they can also, and majority of people work for all clients or all people they come across, not only in palliative care, but for example, in the ambulance, the people who have car accidents and they, you know, we don't know who is there in schools, but not as a chaplain or a priest, but really working on the depth of spiritual well-being and what does that mean for each individual. In hospitals, not necessarily with people dying, but going through enormous pain. So just quickly, that there is a provision of care, service, and that is always connected with collaborative practice. For example, in hospital, there is a whole team of people, psychologists, social workers, and spiritual care practitioners who are helping. And sometimes psychologists cannot help in that way. And usually people come at the crossroad of life, facing enormous pain or challenges, physically, psychologically, life-wise, that they suddenly need. And we know, like many people come to the need of spiritual practice. It's all in terms of work value-based. So we need to be very clear about our values and professional integrity. Said that we are true to. So for example, if somebody asking me to assist in something that I don't know, then I need to speak that out. And I need to find a way with the first, so we can bring somebody who can assist us, that we can all learn together. So the integrity is crucial, and also professional development in terms of learning every year. And, you know, we need to report like in any other, like how many hours of teaching and training, etc. So all these build sustainable, high quality, responsive care for all. But if we translate this just quickly into our individual, personal world, we do care about others, animals, our pets, our loved ones, our neighbors, not necessarily providing service always, but in our practice, in our meditation, it's a huge service to the world, following our own mind. And then collaborative practice, collaborative exchange, allowing yourself to ask questions, allowing yourself not to know and to be vulnerable, and to be aware of your values and to communicate your needs in that way. Many, many, many troubles are for us because we do not communicate our needs. Yes, yes, please.
Yes, I have a question about International Self-Care Foundation. Is that different from what is SCA?
Yes, that's very different. The International Foundation is International Organization for Self-Care that it's working globally, looking into research of different countries. And there is a document and a reference at the end of this presentation that you can refer to. And SCA is Spiritual Care Australia. This is organization, registration body for the profession that is a spiritual care practitioner. And this is the model of work. And that also can be adapted to our personal way of life, to have a personal integrity, to have every year what did I learn, how do I grow, what did I invest in my growth, well-being in that way, and how is that sustainable. So this is why I use this particular graph. Thank you for asking. So next slide. So this is the research that was done by Corey Case in 2005, and later on in 2013, he wrote a book, emeritus professor, who actually looked into well-being of youth in America, in the United States of America. And the reason I choose this study, you'll see later on, is because of the particular way how he looked into well-being of young people. And he came with the notion of subjective well-being, which is basically that we all individually, we evaluate, assess our well-being. Like, where are we alive? Like, are we happy or unhappy? What does that mean? And this evaluation is based on the review, weight or summation of the quality of experiences, accomplishments, relationships, functioning across multiple domains of living. So when you sit in the evening with a cup of tea, or you have a walk and you kind of have a aha moment, what is my life about? What I would like that this has emphasis, which is didn't, and this is the aim, one of the aims of this presentation is to illustrate the beautiful integration of Western psychology and Buddhist psychology, and how that complements each other, and how actually we in Western psychology, trained psychologists can learn so much from Buddhist psychology. So if in Buddha Dharma scientific contemplative science terms, cultivating the mind, this would be introspective well-being. Because how can we evaluate ourselves if we don't have stable attention? As Lama Alan in his teaching says, what is the point of, if we have a telescope and we wish to really clear the lenses, what is the point of, I'm repeating my teacher's words in a rather very clumsy way, what's the point of cleaning the lenses if the telescope is not stable and it's maybe on the, on some shaky surface? So it has to be stable first. We have to have awareness and attention first, capacity to then employ introspection and to have self-reflection. What I mean by that, in everyday life, if we are fused with the pain and depression or sorrow or anxiety, it's not easy to reflect. And when we reflect, it might be blurry and biased and not feeding and nurturing us. It can be negative, much more than it is. So yeah, that's the main point of the research. That also, this is one of the rare studies that looked in the well-being of young people from eudaimonic stream, which is that whole notion of being happy without a stimulus outside, that nobody makes you happy, or you don't have to. Can you be on your own in your chambers without any stimulation and be happy, and thinking about what you can give to the world? So that was very intriguing to me to look at with young people. And then psychological well-being, there is hedonic stream, which is about perception of how other people see me, interest in life, status. And of course, this study also didn't ignore the basic needs. Of course, that we have to have food and shelter, and we need to feel relatively safe that, that we are not, it's very difficult to elaborate this on somebody who is actually not having shelter and regular food. So not hedonic in that way, but hedonic more in the sense, what does make you feel happy, how other people perceive me. And this is before huge wave, if not tsunami, of online young people being on, all this Instagram and internet and all other. So how am I perceived by others? And then also social well-being defined in this study, measured with young people from two streams and tradition, and one is hedonic, which is defined in personal social goods, also business profits, worker productivity. So all this was included. And then what I like is this distinction between the two, that hopefully can help in quality of relationship, neighborhood, communities, and social integration. So they really looked into that, and what they found, that young people who have eudaimonic stream oriented on meaning making, the disclosed and reported to be feeling very happy for the 3 to 5 days, between 3 to 5 days weekly. And young people then who reported that their happiness depends on other people's perception and stimuli, or how they do well, they just reported that maybe there is a one day in a week that I'm happy. And that is so resonating powerfully with everything what we learn here at this Center for Research. This comes to the point, very important point, about really inattention to self-care. What does that mean? And how come I can go to gym every day and be fit and not to look after myself? How is that possible? Or other way around? So what are the consequences? So the elevated stress level and burnout and vicarious trauma and self-medicating behavior. So those are very heavy loaded words. Basically, if we pay attention, which we usually don't, especially people who work and have a commitment to their families. I used to work in academia in different roles, but one of the roles where at once upon a time that doesn't exist anymore. We used to have semesters and breaks, and then during the breaks you could write and publish, and now that doesn't exist. Everything is online all the time, and students can enroll all the time. So, but there were periods of time when people enroll, like, there is the beginning of academic year, and I would notice difference in my patients. People wouldn't necessarily see my behavior, but I would notice. And I knew that I have to look after myself. What is burnout? How far you can go that you don't know your limitation, that you start lacking compassion for your fellow colleague or your client or your student, not because you're a bad person, not because you are not capable of certain things. You're just doing too much for a long time, and how that can be looked after. Vicarious trauma, what is that? It's not to be traumatized by what happened to you personally, directly, but what happened to other people around you at the workplace, or the people that you look after. And those are the different jobs, especially in helping profession. Fragmentation and fusion. That's an emotional, huge area of our life, affect, that we can be fragmented, dissociated, That can be, and they can look very innocent. It can be, I don't want to know about news anymore. I just don't want to know about the news. I'm out of here. How is that? What does that mean? Is that really self-care? Maybe it is. I'm not saying it's not. The question is how. You numb yourself, you divide your attention and your compassion. Is that really sustainable and healthy? Fusion. We fuse with our emotions, we fuse with the feeling of sorrow, or we fuse with our anger and we don't see. So is there a space? There is a space in our mind that we can distinguish what we feel and how we feel. I'm not going to linger, but this is very rich, and we can talk later. Compensation, what do you compensate? What does that mean? I'm just going to give very simplified examples. They can be different, just to bring awareness. You can be very invisible at home. In your family, maybe they're too busy, or maybe they're sick, or maybe family relationship is not that healthy. Maybe you are even put down very often as a child or as an adult. And what do? You compensate by seeking attention in different places. And that can be sometimes beneficial for everyone, but it can be even disastrous for young people, for people. So how do I compensate what I'm missing? Am I aware of what I'm missing? Being overcommitted as a coping mechanism. That could be, I don't like that word workaholic, which is like, but it could be that. It could be overcommitted in things that they don't look like work. Oblivious of your own needs and other people's needs. And sometimes we are oblivious. I can make many examples, unfortunately, that how we grow and how we correct that, how we heal our blindness. And competent. I just wish to emphasize this, how important it is, please. I'm inviting you to reflect. I'm not asking you to do it or suggesting what you need to think or feel. It's just an inviting you to try not to be competent all the time, not to know all the time. And you know why? Because then you are less alert and you are more open-hearted, and the mind has more space. And this is not to distinguish our competence, our skills, our virtues, but from time to time. I remember once, I was quite young, and I wanted to know and why and how for one particular situation, until a friend of mine who was studying then psychology told me, Anita, sometimes very wise people recognize that it's good not to know or to let go. So it is introducing you space and gentleness and self-compassion. And then, therefore, you have that same feeling and space for others. So it's very good not to be competent all the time. Procrastination, so people think, I'm lazy, nobody needs to know. I'm waiting for the 2 days before the deadline, and then I'm going to nail it. Why is that? If we start to understand why we procrastinate, the change will happen. It could be very low self-esteem. You don't believe that for this particular task I can do something, that it's really good. So what happens, we start to avoid that and be distracted. We can even be very hard working with other tasks, but not the very task that needs to be done. So I can clean the entire house instead of sit and do something else that is really required. So I'm not necessarily lazy, but I'm distracting myself, or I'm watching TV, or for that time when needs to be invested. Why? Because I don't believe in myself. And what happens? Why we do then 3 days before the deadline? the stress comes up, adrenaline kicks in, the cortisol stress level kicks in, and you forget about yourself. And you forget about how not good or how weak or not strong enough you are. And you're focusing only on the task. And yeah, that's one of the explanations, not all of them. Then social disconnection, self-sufficiency, believing that we are enough for ourselves, that we are, it's very good to be self-sufficient. I know that a lot of people take many sense of, not necessarily pride, but accomplishment that we are self-sufficient, of course. Certain level of individuality and independence is very healthy, no doubt about it, but it's not about that. It's like believing that you don't need much from anybody. Where does that end and how? Then also inability to receive or accept, and I can say it by working with clients for many, many years of different cultures, different social economic status, different religious backgrounds. There is a struggle. We still struggle to learn how to give, why we are giving, how we are giving, what's our motivation to give. We struggle to receive a gift. You know, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter who every time when I help her something, and she doesn't want me to help her, every time we play in the park and I help her with slide or something, I said, thank you so much, Anya, for allowing me to help you. So that she learns to receive and then to accept yourself. The concept, the very matrix, the very interrelationship of everything we do, that we accept where we are at. And that's how we start. How else we can do it? Impaired in subjectivity. What is that? I'll touch very soon on the very deep, profound notion, very sacred notion of interdependence and intersubjectivity. But psychologically, this fantastic study from 2022, it looks into unhealthy way how we can, and I put some notes here about that study just in terms of that this is manifestation of the problem, that we are deficient in connecting with each other. But also, for example, mentalization as a concept is something, it's our ability to, basically our ability to be in other people's shoes, you know, to have other person's perspective. And one of the impaired things in this intersubjectivity is that we overdo that. And so not only that I can feel your perspective on, you know, be able to understand you, but I kind of persuade myself, I know all about you. You know, don't even go there. So that's really impaired. It's not intersubjectivity, it's reification. That's one of the examples, and it's crucial because a rehabilitation of this I'll talk about later on. We have a recipe for it. We have a method to heal that. It's also, you know, how we, and this study was about mothers and the young children, and how your facial expression and the quality of your presence is actually affecting your child well-being, and it's determining the quality of this child interconnection in the future with others. So then we can really, for people who experience trauma of any kind, maybe one episode in life of a very traumatic event. And why is trauma? Because it's lasting, or had complex trauma or long years of, and they heal the symptoms of trauma. So they are okay. But if they don't attend to themselves, if they don't look after themselves, breathing, rest, enough sleep, if they have a lot of stress, these flashbacks are going to come back. And those are the red flags. Flashback is not necessarily only visual thing that you have a image or memory of some event. It can be emotional, that nothing happens and you suddenly have a huge episode of sadness or a horror or a panic attack out of the blue, and you've been well for 5 years and you've been working hard. But that is the warning, you don't look after yourself. So I really wish to emphasize that it's really important. And then people who, experience trauma of different kinds, they can really feel deeply that they're not even aware. So I emphasize this with the almost compassion and caring. Revisit that, because it can be that you strongly believe that you are not worthy of self-care and that you don't even know that. That happens a lot. So we talked all about these troubles and research and basic concepts, heavy load. And I love these verses that I used in many presentations as anonymous. And I have to actually acknowledge Sita Tara, who helped me the other day when I shared these verses with her. She said, "Oh, I know who wrote that." And so it's Annie's name from 1966, beautifully saying that, and the day came when the risk to remain closed tightly in a bud became more painful than the risk to blossom. And even that study on subjective well-being, at the very end of the research, with all the findings, there is actually a question that the researchers posed the question: how can we be happy while we are investing in our personal growth, while we are investing in our learning? And how we can be closely tied in our self-preservation, protection of ourselves. Refusing to share, refusing to be vulnerable in a sense. These are my needs. I need help. Okay, it's a lot of time. Let's move to the next. I call this healing framework. It's a quote of Lama Alan Wallace. And he talks about this profound innate interdependence. And he's talking about this of interdependence of phenomena that is normally not normally apparent to us. We are not necessarily aware of it, and go beyond appearances and introduce an insight. It's, for example, how do I exist as dependently related event? How do I exist in relation to, and in Buddhism we speak to the 5 skandhas or psychophysical aggregates: the body, feelings, discrimination, mental events, such as thoughts, imagination, recollection, and volition, intention, motivation. And finally, consciousness itself, by the sensory or mental, and all these exist as dependently related events. None exist as an independent entity. So this is really something that I think is a core to be aware of that. And when we're approaching self-care for others and for ourselves, helping ourselves or the others, that this is at the heart of it. Yes.
Can you explain discrimination here?
It's discernment, to really be able to discern between, events or what's happening and how. I think that's that.
Okay, yeah, it's different than mental events, evidently. That's why
Yeah.
I just wondered, was discrimination?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, and then next. It was even in advertisement of this talk about accountability, like what is self-care, what is accountability. It's almost like a framework and the terminology or a glossary. to quickly make clear what is the baseline, what is our view about this self-care. And from American Psychological Association, accountability refers to the extent to which an individual is answerable to another, a mentor, supervisor. You know, we ask for help, we ask for support, and then are we accountable about that? How we do relate with it in terms of our behavior, in terms of our decision making. Then interdependence, definition that from Lamalan that is actually a central theme in Buddhist Madhyamaka philosophy. So it's the worldview that there is nothing independent and separate. And also there is no such thing as own autonomous existence. That like we are not an island, that's for sure, in this view of reality. And I'm really working with this. How is this relevant? What was presented in that research? How is everything interdependent? And how the well-being is actually for young people much more sound and stronger when one has this particular view, which doesn't define us necessarily as a Buddhist. It's not, this is not about that. It's about awareness. Oh, there is a point of view. There is a way to see the world through the lenses of interdependence and intersubjectivity. And it's also intersubjectivity as a, that I'm aware of your presence, and it refers to my awareness in relation to other person's awareness. And as these researchers claim very strongly, based on their findings from 2 years ago, that this is the key to our well-being and our human development, this awareness. In my work, I defined all that back then in context of trauma. I even went so far to call that dignity. And dignity has nothing to do with pride. It's basic dignity of my presence here and awareness of your presence. So this is our intersubjectivity, very powerful in psychology, very essential to Buddhist psychology, very nurturing for all of us. And that helps us to cope. And then eudaimonia, which is the quality of the state of the mind. You know, that it's not dependent on pleasant stimuli. And I can give examples later on if we have time, because it's been almost an hour. So I wish to mention these healing methods, that it's a Buddhist cultivation of compassion. There is the essence of healing, the four heart virtues, the 4 practices, and one is mentioned in the title of this presentation. There's the equanimity, impartiality, but also to practice loving kindness, compassion, and empathetic joy. And that the proximate cause of equanimity is taking responsibility for our own conduct. There, in previous Ghatikas and teaching, there was a mention about awareness and practices of awareness. And as I talk today about being aware of our afflictions, to know your personal warning signs, your red flags, when you are becoming overly tired and impatient, or you lose, you become anxious. You can ask yourself, why? Why am I anxious? Why am I like bored? Like what's happening? Or I'm daydreaming. Like, how do you cope with the pressure and problems? Do you daydream? Or do you confront and you're overdoing stuff? Or you're running away and being anxious? Those are all loss of enjoyment in life. If there is no joy at all. And then also introspection, which is a wonderful, powerful tool of observing the space of our mind, our focus. It's such a method for ethics, our boundaries, Do I have healthy boundaries? What do I mean by that? How is that in relation to the other? It's kind of limits and landscapes of relationship and interactions. From Alan Wallace, the key to human flourishing is cultivation of authentic well-being. It's a sense of flourishing derived from ethical way of life, from mental balance, and from wisdom. It is a joy that comes from within, without relying upon pleasant stimuli. So this is the answer to that research that happened 20 years ago, and the book that was written in 2013 about how we can cherish young people to be authentic and to develop their happiness. Flourishing, just quickly, really, because this is going to be shared, how important that we are coherent, that we are aligned with our needs and our values, and that we are truthful in that way. And also understanding that how important it's not waving a flag about ethics, it's about practicing. You are actually practicing your values and you stand around that. As I said, these are the things that I can negotiate and these are the things that I can't. And in order to have that, and then there is no healing. And I learned that from working across the globe with trauma. To heal person from trauma, from more severe damages and suffering, there has to be a framework of this person's values, the context of what they really, really cherish, where they're coming from. You can't just sit with somebody without context of their values. And there is no healing until we clarify that to ourselves. Authenticity, again, which then gives you, which is kind of surprising, it gives you enormous flexibility because we know what we don't know. And we are open and able to be flexible rather than controlling. There is this huge stigma and a very pejorative, very diminishing expression, control freak, which is basically person is afraid. Person is afraid of failing, disappointing, authority or themselves or the family. So the control comes out of fear. And when we understand that, we can have compassion. We can have conversation about it. Communicating our needs, I cannot emphasize enough. Even if we just practice that, mindfulness of breathing, settling our body, speech, and mind in natural state, and communicating our needs in a kind, benevolent way. Asking for help, please ask for help, and delegating, but not judging people. Openness to experiences and confidentiality and trust. When nothing is safe around us, can we come back to our heart, open our heart, and evolve in our reconnecting and spiritual practice? So for the very end of this very long talk, and thank you so much for putting up with all this and for your attentive listening. And hopefully we will have questions later on, a few of them. I really wish to read this prayer that His Holiness the Dalai Lama prays every day. And it's, may I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector for those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with ocean to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger. Sorry, a bridge of those with rivers to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and the servant to all in need. Thank you. And now we can have a Ghatika. So let's position our bodies. So as expression of loving kindness for ourselves, let's settle our body and speech and mind in a natural state. And just allow ourselves to rest in stream of our own awareness. And let's just attend to ourselves now. To this individual, this person. Would you please attend to yourself with kindness, warmth, gentleness. Attend to this person, to yourself, so lovingly, because you're worthy of love. You're worth of all the blessings. You're worth of all the gentleness, nurture, and care. Attend to yourself. Attend to yourself as a loving mother is attending to a child, as a loving father is attending to a child. Attend to yourself. And now, gently, we are going to embark on a journey, the fourfold vision quest. So now when we are tending so gently, let's ask ourselves, what would make you really, truly happy? What are your aspirations? What is your heart desire? Try to imagine, manifest in front of yourself. Allow yourself to embrace your heart desire, here and now. So now we go to the second question. What would you need to receive from the world? What is the quality and the nature of the help and support that you need to receive to achieve or accomplish your heart desire, your aspiration? What is the help that you need to receive? Please visualize that, imagine. Clarify gently but precisely what is that you need to receive from the world. So that you can nurture your well-being, your heart desire. We cannot have this full flourishing and well-being just from help of outside, that it's very needed, but we need to transform from within. We need to change a few things from within, grow, evolve. So, what would you like to change and transform? What are the qualities that you would like to let go? What are the qualities that you would like to learn? How can you change from within, transform from within? Allow yourself to imagine the profound, beautiful inner transformation to support your heart desire. And now gently, warmly, lovingly, you have very clear vision of what would make you truly happy and what do you need to receive from the world. You travel with your inner journey to transform yourself, you know very well. Now please, can you imagine and clarify, what would you give to the world? What would you offer? Your best aspirations, your best virtues and skills. Very specific to you, to your capacity, to your values, to your background. How would you like to contribute to the world? Allow yourself to see that and to offer it right now from the depth of your heart. And now gently again, from the depth of your heart, envision and wish and pray for all sentient beings, for all humans and for all sentient beings to be happy, to be free of suffering, and to be genuinely happy. Imagine that, envision that, and envision a pearl or a little orb at your heart, orb of light, and allow that light to radiate from the depth of your heart throughout this space here, throughout the virtual space, this sacred valley of Preston, to this continent, to all continents, in all directions. Light from your heart to all sentient beings, to our Mother Earth, light of boundless love. Praise it. And now gently come back to the center of your heart. Wishing yourself and all sentient beings, wishing to all sentient beings and yourself included, happiness, genuine happiness, peace, and boundless love, and rest in this peace and love. And that gently brings this session to a close. So it's been a long session of presentation, but if you have any questions, please. And we can just share the slide quickly with thank you and references maybe. Yes, please.
It's a question from my daughter, actually. She works with children, and she was wondering, you spoke about values in healing, the process of healing to kind of connect with values. And but can you say more about what the values are and how you would do that with children? Giving suggestions.
So the question is about the healing and values, and especially working with children. In context of self-care and working with children. So firstly, if a person chooses to work with children, they must have a certain set of values that makes them feel happy and makes the life meaningful, working and looking after children. And then also there are certain values and rules and regulations about working with children in terms of us learning what is the best way to approach and nurture children in their development. To be truly nurturing, compassionate carer for children, we need to have an open heart. So my answer to that question would be, what is it that I really truly value in life? And how I go about it? And how is this serving my role in looking after the children? And most importantly, I believe, is how can I prevent along the way situations of burnout? Because that's, as I said, facial expression and the body presence, it's very, very powerful in presence of children. They're very perceptive. So that would be my, I would develop a part of, these are the things that I really value and how I go about them. And what is the practice and every day? I don't want to make any suggestions, but do I take a breath between two tasks? Do I allow myself to have a time? Because it's very demanding job to work with children, and it's very rewarding as well. So yeah, to define, I don't know if I answered your question.
I'm not sure either because she's not here.
Yeah.
I'm assuming she was wondering more about connecting with the values for the children, to point out what would be a value for them.
For her own children or for
working with like traumatized children.
Oh.
So it's
that I would go to that intersubjectivity. There is no one person defining. So first of all, we come together to heal children and to look after children, with each of us being very clear about our own values, because it's important when we try to help somebody that we know our limitations.
okay.
That is so important. And that doesn't mean that you are less caring and less worthy, but there are things that we can't do. We simply can't. And some people can, and some people, as I mentioned, some people are going to use different coping strategy. So come to the meeting, come to the gathering of healing, knowing yourself. And then you can speak and say, I'm concerned about this aspect of helping because this is not my strength. So can anybody, and then you will together find, hopefully with carers or parents, or maybe not, as a community of healers and caregivers what is the best in that particular moment, but it's that knowing from within and being transparent, because I'm aware of my limitation, and that helps me a lot. And then sometimes I'm not, but I'm receptive of other people showing me and telling me, oh, yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
You mentioned when she was introducing you that you use some of the wrong terminology.
Yes.
So is my experience that there are times when we kind of outgrow ourselves and our old selves.
Yes.
And there's sometimes that's perceived by a tension between the two. And when that change occurs, everything else has to shift to support it. Can you talk about that in meditative life?
I don't know if I understood properly your question, but I'll repeat what I've heard. You would like me to talk a little bit about transition when we are meditating, practicing, and then when we are changing and evolving. And the tension you mentioned, the word tension between, can you tell me what's the tension about?
Oh, between the old self and the new.
Old self and the new self. Okay. I don't know to answer that, but what I would answer is I would invite you intimately to define your old self and the new self. This is what I would really encourage you to. Is there a tension, or is there in that reflection, in that transition, what is it that you are letting go? Is that, how does that feel? Because that answer is for you individually. And what is important sometimes, I don't have enough knowledge, but I think that it's important for if you talk to someone about your biggest struggles or deepest tensions, that sometimes we are witnesses. I can be a bear witness, listening your expressions of transition and quality of my listening and presence can help you answer that question, because it's so personal for every single practitioner that I wouldn't dare to generalize. Yes, please.
Just one comment and then a question. My comment on my own self-care is that I just completed a 4-week retreat in Hawaii at a Dharma center. And tomorrow I get a massage and then I go to hot spring, because I too am an educator. I'm with children here in Crestone. So my question is empathy taught or is it innate?
Okay. I'm talking from personal experience. The question was, sorry, if empathy is taught, learned, or it's innate. His Holiness Dalai Lama and our teachers, they say quite often that it's in our nature to care. Caring is in our nature. And I would say that the fabric of the universe, of this interdependence, is compassion. And then remember all those things, very heavy things happened. How we learn to reveal that it's within us, it's already there. What happened to us? Do we have a trauma and then we are dissociated, or we can't, and it doesn't have to be trauma. It can be a lot of little tiny things along the way. How we were taught and raised to love. What does that mean? Is that empathy and compassion? And there is a difference, as you know, between the two. Because empathy is more like, I'm related to you and I can feel to be in your shoes, while compassion is really action and offering, and what can I do for this child? And you have your professional training, of course. And also, there is very famous expression and knowledge and research about compassion fatigue. And it's very important to know about it and what happened to us that we have fatigue of compassion. And somebody asked me the other day, how on earth that can happen if you're practicing? But people don't practice. So it's in our, it's in our Buddha nature. It's in our kingdom within. It's within us. But how we go about, that's a different story. Thank you for asking that. Thank you.
We have a question from Clara online.
Yes. Oh, beautiful.
Hello. Hi, thank you so much, Anita, for a wonderful presentation. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I've been uneasy about the topic or the term self-care for a while now, because it seems to me that the prioritization of the concept of self-care, not so much the referent or the actual practice or looking after ourselves, of course, but the making self-care into a thing, a concept that we need to prioritize, seems to me in the conventional understanding in our society to be very rooted in a dualistic worldview, where we need to almost compensate for the care that we give to others, the looking after of others, by then prioritizing ourselves almost as an antithesis, an antidote to doing too much for others. So there seems to be in the conventional understanding very much that dichotomy. So yeah, if I'm in a very caring profession like nursing, for example, then I need to compensate almost for looking after others by looking after myself as a separate thing. And it seems to me that I was very interested in your distinction between self-care first, and then you talked about spiritual care, which to me seems to be just another way of saying living in accordance with Dharma. And to the extent I think that we really do live in accordance with Dharma and have our view of the world is one of having internalized intersubjectivity and interdependence, the need for self-care as a separate thing would almost fade away, because we live in, just to give an example, I can't imagine the Dalai Lama, when he practices bodhicitta all day, then thinking to himself, well, now I have to prioritize my own needs for a change. I think to the extent that we live from that perspective and have internalized that worldview, the need to practice self-care as a separate thing would almost fade away, because we don't see that antithesis anymore. Just a reflection. I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
I hope I wasn't unmuted all the time. So thank you so much, dear friend Clara, for this beautiful reflection. I think I provided definitions of self-care, and the 7 pillars and 7 aspects of self-care that include spiritual care, and that includes mental, psychological, physical care. And I know that you're talking from experience and what is happening in the world and in profession and business in particular. But the example of His Holiness, which is that he was born and raised in intersubjectivity and interdependence as a core, as not only as a view, but as a world that he exists and gives everything to the world. So for us in the West, who consider ourselves individual, there is no, to my understanding, and I'm sorry if it came out across that way, I don't think that I made distinction. I made the emphasis on the two from my profession as a psychologist and what is required for self-care and as a spiritual care practitioner. And that emphasis coming together in the Tibetan training on awareness, mindfulness, and introspection. And that flow of all aspects is that's why I put the healing framework that is Lama Zalan profound definition of intersubjectivity, and that equanimity. But what I found working with clients, that it is separated in a way that people care. It's not compensation. It's even worse than that. And I remember there was conversation with scientists and His Holiness decades ago, when he first time heard about notion that people in the West have a low self-esteem, that people actually live without believing that they are worth it. He didn't understand. He asked interpreters full time to explain what does that mean. So it's a different universe. And not only that we separate that self-care or compensate, but we don't believe that we are worth it all. And that's what I found in, there is so much sadness when you see how beautiful people across the globe of different creeds, and different social economic status, different profession, they have the same challenge. They don't know how to look after themselves. They don't know how to attend because they don't believe that they are worth it. And maybe in that fragmentation or fusion, like I'm fused with my anger, or my depression took over, or I'm fragmented and I don't want to know about things, I can go to gym and I can compensate as a treat. I'm not against the treatment. We all love treatment, but I don't think it's a division. What my aim was is to demonstrate how, because when we pray, sometimes I ask people, I actually advise and say, I'm not telling people what to do, but I invite them, when you pray for all sentient beings, can you please include yourself? And that's that equanimity, because we don't do that. We forget, we neglect. And then the other extreme, to answer to your, or reflect on your comment, is when we put ourselves first and we cherish ourselves. So let me just make sure I'm okay. So those are the two extremes of the different sides of the same coin. And the healing is in that framework, in that interdependence, in just look into this worldview. Nobody is asking anybody to become a Buddhist, but there is something profoundly, deeply knowledgeable, helpful, straightforward that can be taken from this sacred tradition and then integrated. As I said, self-coherence is a way of flourishing, which means I'm a part of this interaction. You know, that the world is not an accumulation of things, but it's a symphony of relationship and interdependence. And the sound of symphony can be sometimes too loud or too harsh, but that's what I try to convey. So thank you so much. It's very valuable to always to learn and exchange with you. Thank you.
We don't have any more questions online, but I just want to read a comment from Brian. Brian Malone, who says, I think it's important to be mindful of our internal state, energy level, mental reserves when caring for others to be sure we avoid burnout. It is painful to recognize that we need to dial back in order to continue being of service. That is where self-care comes in as a way of recharge.
Thank you so much, Brian. And I just wish to acknowledge that your self-care and caring for your loved one has been inspiration for many of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Anita. It's been wonderful to hear you speak
I
on
was
this.
trying to say something, but I can't hear it.
Oh. Go ahead,
I
Brian.
just said thank you. Thank you, Anita, and it's wonderful to hear you speak on this topic.
Okay. I think we can.
Yeah, we can wrap up. We had a request from Constance as well to maybe share more in the future about the research, the methodologies, the research questions, things like that. So just planting a seed that maybe we can have a session someday for our community about.
Yeah, I
research.
would be happy to. I would be happy to talk about that. So yeah, that's a very nice seed. We can prepare something about that and the share. I would love to share what we actually do here and how and why. Yes, so thank you so much. I just wish to say one more time, thank you so much for your patience and attention from the bottom of my heart. It's been a great privilege and honor, and I hope that this was at least beneficial a little bit. I hope I didn't bother you too much. Yeah, it's I feel the nurture and love, and I try to share that and exchange among us online in real time and here in person. So thank you all. Thank you so much. May all be well.